MyChart notification hit my phone at 5:11 a.m. while the humidifier hissed beside our bed and snow dusted the streetlights on South Emerson. It congratulated me for countersigning a consent for donor insemination at clinic in Laundry and attached a PDF with my name in fluid blue script I recognized and didn't, dated at 9:42 p.m. the night before. 6 minutes later, FirstBank flagged a $9,250 wire queue to Alpine Reproductive Endocrinology, with a memo line that read Cycle Package Harper and an instruction that both account holders had approved. I didn't touch my wife, didn't shake her awake, didn't stage a scene. I took the phone to the kitchen, set it beside the sugar bowl, and opened the attachments under the yellow pendant light we had bought at Rejuvenation during a year that felt simpler. The consent list of my wife, Tessa, as patient and me as partner. A second signature line showed a neatly angled facsimile of my name. Our address in Washington Park sat below in crisp Helvetica. The IP address in the consent audit trail ended in 114, which matched our Comcast router. The wire confirmation email carried our names at the top, our joint FirstBank account number masked except for the final four, and a case reference FBK and V-29483. I collected screenshots, printed to PDF, then to paper, and clipped the stack with a magnet onto the side of the fridge like a school calendar. We have lived in Denver long enough that certain drives feel like muscle memory. I run a small flooring outfit, engineered wood, LVP, the occasional hardwood refinish out of a van stencil with my name and license number. In a market like ours, people in the know call you when the basements flood or the herbs get you by skis and dogs. I keep a warehouse bay off South Santa Fe stocked with leftover planks that I work into IKEA-proof tables I sell on a site that used to be Etsy before Phase 8 margins. Tessa is an oncology nurse at UC Health on the Anschutz campus in Aurora. Mostly nights, mostly 12-hour shifts that spill into 14 when a code loses a minute and then more. We have a son, 10, whose soccer team runs drills at Wash Park until the sun slides down and the lights along Franklin hum. Our house is a brick bungalow with a small dormer bedroom over the living room and a kitchen I tiled myself, a tiny backyard where an aggressive squirrel patrols the fence like a TSA agent. Money moves around our life like water in old pipes. My dad in Arvada had a minor stroke last spring, where Hab Corpus ran ahead of his savings and Medicare paperwork. Tessa's student loan sat like boulders rolling interest, and we've chased the forgiveness program through HR signatures and put on online forms. Our son's braces arrived a year before we budgeted. I took a truckload of clients who enforced deadlines with Yelp reviews, Tessa grad shifts until the name badge felt like it had grown under her skin. We were not drowning, we were perpetually wet. The first red flag I ignored because it wore a good cause suit. Tessa started smelling like hotel soap and eucalyptus instead of hospital and coffee. She said the locker room shower started stocking new brands after a donation drive. It sounded easy to believe. The second red flag felt smaller and lived in the rubber band of routine. Our phone turned face down more often, with a new 6-digit code after years of lazy thumbprints, excused as a hospital policy. The third was a cluster of nothings. A recurring $12 charged to a place called Seven Pines Storage on South Broadway appeared on our joint card. A yellow parking stub from a garage at Park Meadows peeped from the Subaru's console on a night she said she had covered another nurse's shift. The nest hello on our porch blinked off just long enough, on a handful of nights, to leave gaps I could draw around with a pen. Add to that the scent of a cologne that wasn't mine on one of her hoodies a week after we returned it to the laundry pile. Not accusations. Not proof. A small bag of gravel you start to carry in your chest pocket. After the consent notice I drove the Subaru through the slow blue light and parked behind the FirstBank on a lane 10 minutes before opening. When the manager unlocked the door she followed the com protocol all banks have to keep customers from boiling over. She pulled our account, placed a temporary hold on the outbound wire, gave me the fraud investigator's card and a case number scribbled in Sharpie same as the email and advised me to file a police report for signature fraud as documentation. Her fingers tapped in a measured way that made me steady. I shifted money I could into a brand new solo checking I had opened 2 months earlier when things started feeling like they might need a spare parachute. I memorized the last 4 digits of the new debit on purpose. Knowledge feels like a sword when paperwork is a dragon. I drove to the storage facility on South Broadway after turning a job over to my second-in-command for the day. The clerk recognized me the way people in service recognize other people in service. I set my vendor badge from the Flooring Association on the counter, asked whether a unit under Harper had any maintenance holds, and used the silence that followed to note a unit number on a clipboard left face up to help a trainee. It is difficult to explain what unlocking someone's rented space does to a person's heart. The torsion oscillate with a thin rattle. Inside, a garment bag, 2 storage totes, a pelican case, a brown paper Trader Joe's bag with the store name blacked over in Sharpie. In the pelican case, an invoice from Alpine Reproductive Endocrinology printed with our joint address. 3 receipts from Wells Fargo, cashier's checks made to Alpine with memo lines reading Consult, Labs, Cycle, and a gleaming stack of glossy brochures for a mid-rise at City Park called North Shore Flats with floor plans circled in red. In the Trader Joe's bag, a ring box from Hyde Park Jewelers with a narrow platinum band and a receipt. The size on the tag was 5.5. Tessa weighs 6.5. My lungs did something embarrassing in the winter cold of a corrugated unit and didn't inform me first. On the way home, I pulled up Google Maps timeline, a feature we had both left on forever ago when we cared about reminding ourselves which cafe had that pastry with the sesame seeds. The map for Tessa's night showed a rhythm that deviated from UC Health's Aurora rectangle. A dot now and then at a Tower Road stay and park lot. A dot at a building off East Colfax near City Park with an interior courtyard and a rooftop that on their website looked like a place people in aspirational clothing smiled at night. The dates of the dots intersected softly with the gaps in the nest hello and the text messages she had sent saying she was catching up on charting in the car because the unit was loud. I recorded, not in anyone's surveillance sense but because I have learned that future me never regrets notes. The odometer reading in the Subaru at 8:01 a.m., then at 6:37 p.m. The price of gas at our pump when she filled up at 2:12 a.m. The timestamp on a coffee transaction at the 24-hour Starbucks off Parker Row. The mileage on my van when I turned out of our alley. I wrote in my worn notebook, the one I use for measurements and start/stop times, the address of the storage unit and the size of the ring band. If you think I became obsessive, imagine this, a small boy in a coral hat running wind sprints at Wash Park across the street from a life being reframed, and a father clapping, counting, smiling, while stacking dates in his headlight tiles. I told myself to ask Tess in daylight at the table, without heat. Then Saturday arrived, and our son's indoor league had the morning game, and Tessa said she would meet us there after sleeping a few hours from her train wreck of a night. The school gym on Downing smelled like floor cleaner and onion bagels. Parents set up chairs, a volunteer with the whistle rearranged cones. Tessa arrived in leggings and my college sweatshirt and hugged our son so fiercely other parents smiled. After the game, while people ate orange slices and our coach handed out pennies, I asked Tessa to walk with me to the hallway outside the gym. I set my folder on a bench, the MyChart consent with my forged e-signature, the FirstBank wire hold, the storage unit invoices, a printout of the Alpine cashier's checks, and a 1-page print of her Google timeline for the nights in question. I kept my voice level because this was a school hallway and people carry scenes home even when they pretend they don't. I asked if she could help me make sense of the consent and the wire and the storage unit. She used the word people use at first when they are willing to set a table with explanation and see if you eat. She said she and I had discussed years ago what we might do if my low sperm count after my mumps episode meant a donor made sense, and she had simply started the process preemptively in case my pride delayed sense. She said the wire was cued by her, yes, but for a consultation, and that it could be cancelled if I said the word. She said the storage unit was a place she kept extra uniforms and holiday stuff, and why had I gone there, and how did I even know it existed? She said the ring was for me because I had lost mine. I was looking at a narrow band I could not shove onto my knuckle with a hammer. She said the City Park brochure was aspirational vision boarding because chilling in hospitals makes you dream about balconies. People in the gym hallway glanced. Parents collect the scent of brewed trouble like dogs. I did not argue in the hallway. I tucked the folder under my arm and walked back to watch our son roll the ball between 2 water bottles. A dad I know only from Saturday mornings made a face that said he would have waited till home. Perhaps he was right, but honest things rarely happen in kitchens. Reveal 1 fell apart on its own a few days later. Alpine's billing department called and left a voicemail with a case reference that matched the wire, asking if the card on file would cover labs for MST, Harper and partner Harper-Calloway, which is a name I didn't own. Alpine's portal did what portals do poorly, sent me an email that belonged to a mistyped address with a PDF attached, a lab order for semen analysis for a male partner whose birthday wasn't mine. The PDF had metadata. I looked because I understand files the way I understand Savoir. The properties said the document had been generated on a Mac registered to Harper-Calloway. I did what a person trying to be decent does. I printed the page and put it on the stack and did not text anyone whose last name might be Calloway. Money tightened its fist then, as money tends to do in choreography with shame. FirstBank froze the joint account pending household fraud review. My business checking had enough for payroll plus 2 suppliers, not more. I floated 3 jobs with inventory I had in the shop and one with a deposit a client paid in cash, smiling at tile selections like my house went cramping. Tessa's schedule kept shape-shifting, which is normal when aneurysms, rupture and cancer patients spike fevers and positions go unfilled, which is also a perfect alibi for any night not spent where I had assumed someone was spending it. Our son's orthodontist texted about the next phase. The amount was the amount. I sold 2 reclaimable tables to a broker in Rhino who overpaid because his client needed a look. I blessed that client in a parking lot under a mural of a fox. The independent witness came not from a neighbour but from a co-worker I barely know, a courier who runs specimens between clinics and who occasionally has me refinish the butcher block tops in his wife's bakery. He saw me at a King Soopers and said, in the confidential term menus when they are doing what they think is good against their better instincts, that he had run a lab pickup at Alpine last week, and thought he had recognized Tess in the lounge with a man who wore a Broncos beanie and had a tattoo on his wrist like a longitude coordinate. He wasn't sure, he didn't want to make trouble, he would testify fast. He hoped I didn't ask. I told him I appreciated his concern and that he should say nothing to anyone. I went home and wrote down the wrist detail because that is how I staunch grief with a list. I made boundaries like a carpenter marking cuts with blue tape. I froze the joint card. I opened a no-frills card in my name with a low limit and used it for groceries and gas. I moved utilities into my name, paid fresh deposits, and kept receipts in a folder labeled bore. I opened a separate savings for our son with me as custodian and slid $50 in like it was a seed. I emailed UC Health HR, not to tumble Tessa into trouble, but to ask for verification of shifts for the nights in question, citing a documentation for a family court matter, which is a phrase that unlocks doors. I wrote a letter, not a text, to Tessa stating that, unless we both agreed otherwise in writing, any medical procedures affecting our finances or legal status would be paused, and that I would sign no consents without a full consult where both of us were present. I added, with a kindness I did not feel but wanted to perform, that if she needed me to ensure a life she wanted to bring into the world had support, I would find a way to be decent. I printed the letter, put it on her pillow, and took our son to skate on the little rink by Union Station because winter needed a use. Public seemed to arrive via HOA. Our block association, 5 bungalows, 1 triplex, hosts a meeting in a neighbour's living room once a quarter to argue about garbage cans and squirrels. I brought a notebook to take minutes because I needed a roll. I brought a manila folder because paper wants there. When the agenda reached new business, I raised a general security issue pertinent to title fraud and consent forms and set 2 redacted documents on the coffee table, the Alpine consent with my forged signature names covered, the FirstBank wire hold, the storage invoice. I sent the county is filing a lot of mortgage fraud cases and we should all freeze our credit and sign up for title monitoring, and if anyone receives a notarization request from me, they should call me first. Nobody gasped, people put non-committal hands on their chins. Someone made a joke about squirrels forging signatures. Then, because Denver is a village, one woman asked in a whisper if Tessa was okay. I said she was a professional and professionals sometimes struggle in private. People nodded in the way of those who hope marriage is a train they are not riding. Revealed 2 walked straight through my front door in hiking boots. My babysitter, me, a sophomore at the U with a plant collection and an appetite for truth, told me after a Tuesday night that a man had come by an hour after Tessa left for admin time, using the code on our back door keypad, then flipped the small exterior brake that controls the Nest Hello before knocking. She wouldn't have told me except she had a quiz and was studying in the kitchen. She saw him from the window. She watched him kill the camera like it was practiced. She wrote down the time, 10:33 p.m, and what he wore, a puffer with a stitch patch that said North Shore Flats. I installed an interior camera on an outlet inside the back door the next morning and moved the doorbell transformer inside the stairwell because I can run lower voltage wire with my eyes closed. By Thursday, the Nest no longer died when someone touched a breaker. Reveal 3 came from the school. Our son's music teacher included a photo in the monthly blast of a special parent showcase day where any adult could come and watch band practice. In the group, 2 rows back, Tessa smiled with the man whose arm half showed a thin tattoo along his wrist numbers like a longitude coordinate. The school byline named the event, a timestamp sat unobtrusively in the corner. The music teacher's email carried an offhand thank you to the Harper-Calloway family for donating practice reads. I read it until the words blurred and then saved it to my case folder like a coward. I met with a lawyer in Cherry Creek with windows like a dentist's office and a receptionist with perfect posture. The lawyer had the calm that people who write orders exude. He read my stack, underlined dates, and asked me to put the story in the order judges like money, child, safety, temperament. He recommended filing for legal separation with temporary orders for decision-making and parenting time, and a motion to enjoin either party from incurring new joint debt or medical consents without the other. He drafted a letter to Alpine requesting the audit trail for the consent, and to FirstBank requesting documentation of IP addresses used to queue the wire. He wrote to UC Health for shift verification, and to the school for pickup blocks the day of the music showcase. He gave me an intake checklist with 50 boxes. I checked them with a pen that scratched like a metronome. Knots tightened. UC Health HR responded. Tessa had not been on the unit the nights in question. She had recorded education hours with a preceptor for a clinical course. Times didn't align with when she claimed to be charting. FirstBank's road investigator called and confirmed two-factor approval for the wire had pinged both our phones, but had only been entered on one device. Alpine produced the audit trail. My e-sign had been placed from a machine using our home IP, with the device signature matching a MacBook Pro. I do not own a MacBook. Tessa does. The school sent a single line. On the day of the parent showcase, Tessa had listed Calloway as a secondary guardian in the visitor log, which is permitted for that day's event. Inside that mess, my body slipped in a strange, mean way. After pulling out carpet at a job in Platt Park, my left forearm trembled for a few minutes like it had a tiny motor. I went to an urgent care because I am not a person who wants to drop in a client's living room. The doctor told me my electrolytes were low and that stress eats minerals. He prescribed water and sleep and a blood draw if it returned. In the waiting room, a banner bill posted to our portal for a lab I didn't recognize. The CPT code on the statement corresponded to a net screen. I closed my eyes and felt the floor shift. The screen did not carry a name because Banner's portal sometimes replaces names with MRNs in error. The date matched an afternoon I had been at the consult. Tessa had said she was in triage. I did not decide to pursue a paternity test that afternoon. I wrote a sentence in my notebook. If asked by a court, I will comply. I will not drag a swab across anyone's cheek because of my wounded pride. Morality is not a trophy. It is a fence I built around a person who did not ask to be in any of this. I understand that some will call me naive. I do not mind being called names by invisible people. The temporary orders day arrived. The county court on Bannock smells like paper and disinfectant. The judge read our filings and asked neither of us to perform our pain. He set a temporary parenting schedule that favoured routine. I would handle school nights, Tessa would have alternate weekends and a dinner each week. Exchanges would be at the Washington Park Rec Centre because familiarity quiets children. He enjoined either party from adding any third party to school or medical records without the other's written consent. He prohibited any new joint debts, wires, or medical consents touching both parties' liability, enforced by a contempt warning that carried the weight of the state. He wrote a line that made me respect him. Neither party is to speak to the child about adult matters. He assigned our filer number DR25-114,792 and stapled the order. He asked us to complete a co-parenting class. He did not look dramatic. Quiet saved my life that day. Tess accused me, later not in a courtroom, of ambushing her with paperwork and neighbours and making out life a story people would tell. She said Calloway was a co-worker who had been through a divorce and was helping her move a date and had become a friend. She said they had attended a clinic talk together because she was exploring fertility options that we had discussed in theoretical ways when we were 29 and now had to hurry because biology treats women like expiration dates. She said the consent would have been discussed if I hadn't been so brittle for months about money and work and a house that always drops a new expense. She said I had emasculated her with the police reports and neighbours and turned her into a cautionary point. I listened and thought of signatures and breakers and beanies with logos. I thought of a vase line under the music we had built. An apology arrived in a sideways way. Alpine emailed an amended consent form for the record, showing one signature rather than two. FirstBank closed the wire case without dinging our account and kept the fraud flag active on joint wires for 90 days. The storage unit auto-charge stopped. A final statement arrived with a forwarding address for a new street off Colfax I did not write down. I attended the co-parenting class online in my living room with a glass of water and the determination to pass a test about communicating on an app that logs tone. I learned that judges adore logs and detest long texts. I learned how to rephrase petty panic into bright bullet points, pickup time, location. Can trade today. Can trade Thursday. Confirm yes, no. The independent witness returned one more time, this one from a place that surprised me and did not. A nurse on Tessa's unit who has hired me twice to fix baseboards texted me after a scheduled day of pickups and simply said she had been told by Tessa that I was an unsafe person. She said she did not believe that I wanted to be careful, and she had seen Tessa cry in an empty room about a life that felt like a raft with a leak and a man who kept a ledger instead of her heart. She said she was sorry. She did not mean anything with malice. She meant to ask how to help a child she had watched be carried into a lobby by a man with a patient face. I thanked her without drama. I put the phone down. I went to my son's room, looked at his muddy cleats, and decided to clean them like a ritual, toothbrush in hand. Soap suds foaming like absolution. My life now is a rhythm of pickups and Van Nuys a final plank, of sending receipts for half the braces to a co-parenting app that reduces everything to tidy flags and green check marks. I replaced the porch light with a motion-activated sconce that hums quietly when a rabbit passes the stoop. I moved the Nest Tiller transformer into a locked closet with conduit because I have learned that breakers are stories someone else can tell if you let them. I joined LifeLock not because I think it saves you, but because a monthly email keeps the heart rate of a panicker from spiking. I moved our son's code word at school to a phrase nobody would guess because it has no sentimental center. I wrote small on a piece of paper he can carry until the new routine fits his mouth. I see Tessa in the parking lot at Washington Park Rec sometimes when we exchange. She wears the exhaustion of nurses and the new shoegate of someone living somewhere with elevators. She is still kind to our son in the ways that count when it counts. I do not ask questions that trap her in an answer. I do not volunteer pain she cannot or will not hold. I hold my line. No new joint liability. No school or medical changes without birth. No introduction of any new partner to our son inside 6 months. I put it in writing the way a carpenter screws a ledger board and checks it is level. Would you press a criminal complaint for a forged medical consent when the clinic's portal coughs up an audit trail and your bank has your back? Or would you let the civil orders hold like scaffolding and save the hammer for when a wall actually falls? Would you insist on a test tied to an unborn claim that intersects your finances? Or would you step back and let the world do what it does without making a swab into a sword? I chose to be a fence and not a weapon. Others, with other histories and children and bank accounts, will choose otherwise and I will not call them wrong. The MyChart app still lives on my phone because I cannot pretend health is not a lane we drive in. The 5:11 a.m. blue light wakes me sometimes even when no notifications exist. My body remembers the cold shape. When I cannot sleep, I stand at the kitchen window and look at South Emerson, the snow glow on porches, the periodic slow drift of a car. The new sconce hums almost imperceptibly when something moves on the steps. It is a sound only a person who has sat still long enough can hear. I brew coffee before the boy wakes. The house smells like cedar and whatever candle my sister left on the counter. The stack on the FirstBank letter, court order, Alpine's amended PDF sits clipped neatly under the magnet shaped like a trout our son bought at a Cherry Creek Arts Festival. It is thinner now, not gone, tidy in a way that no longer feels like a resume for pain. One morning last week, a crow hopped up the walkway like it owned a place inside it to the camera, peering right into the lens, its eye comically glossy. The nest pushed a clip to my phone at the same minute the humidifier hissed and the snow made a thin blue glitter of the street. I watched the video back 3 times, the ridiculous solemnity of a bird inspecting its reflection. The sconce thrummed because bodies exist. The house exhaled. The crow blinked and flew. I drank coffee and marked a cut line on a plank with blue tape for a client in lower high because a straight line satisfies the part of me that loves what can be measured. The rest I let sit in the dark calm until the sun rose enough to prove it would.